In this 5-minute video, I asked Magdalena Yesil, the first investor at Salesforce.com, the very important question of scaling. And in this graphic, this is quickly demonstrated in looking at the technology adoption curve. Crossing over the chasm means having to build on the early successes of winning over the early adopters and also converting the early majority. And for many companies, this is where they crash and burn.
So the very first question is the trajectory. So how does a company scale up? And specifically, you asked about scaling up the customers. How do you get bigger customers? Right? That's the question you're asking. So it's an interesting story, and I'll tell you. When we first got started at Salesforce, we were in the very beginning and middle of the .com boom. So there were lots and lots of small technology companies who were getting a ton of venture capital. And our very first customer base was the .com companies that were, that had cash, and they were springing up everywhere. And because we were such an easy to use piece of software for their sales organizations, we got great customer adoption. That went on very well for us until the day the stock market crashed, and then we were in the middle of the .com bust.
Yes.
When we realized that we had to, if we wanted the bigger customers, to actually hire a direct sales force, it meant that we would end up spending a ton more money than we had been. So it was making that decision, taking that risk, and really changing the culture of the company, because the company had been very telesales oriented. Everything happened from the headquarters. And now we were going to start opening offices around the world. We were going to start hiring expensive salespeople. We were going to pay for them to fly around and go see customers. It was a very scary proposition. It wasn't like we were going to sell them a piece of software and then they were going to run it on their premise. We were saying, no, give us your data. We want you to put all your data basically in the cloud. And the cloud didn't exist.
No.
SaaS didn't exist.
Right.
So they were saying, wait a second, you're a very small company. How can I trust you? And so that really was a very important pivotal, change in the way we sold. We had to establish, what personal trust relationships with our customers. It took a much longer cycle to sell to them. So we were, spending time, but not necessarily closing a sale. So all of that was transformational, but ultimately the company ended up becoming a major success because our sales organization, and really, it is Mark Benioff's, huge capability. He's such a great salesperson.
It sounded like to me it's somewhat of a calculated risk, right? To grow
well,
that.
For me, it was, because I was on the board and I voted for it. I mean, I wanted to do that. For me, it was as I would say, a no-brainer. I felt we had to do it. We didn't have another option. I was convinced of that. But for other people around us, that's not how they felt. They felt like it was a huge risk. And they felt like, in fact, we were going to break what we had created. We were going to break this fantastic sales model, which was all over the web.
Right.
And they felt that that was such a great differentiator for Salesforce, and we should just stick with it. And we were saying, no, we're going to totally change it. We're going to throw away that model. We're going to embrace this other model. So that was the change.
So back then, again, probably pivoting wasn't
pivoting did not exist.
well used.
No, and I actually, it's a term I don't like very much.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, the moment I hear pivoting, I wonder if the company really spent enough time thinking about it, or if they're just reacting to the first difficulty they have.